Okay, if we could get everyone somewhere where you can hear me. Good? Okay.
That's 2 blocks away.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So I'll shift downward. Can I sit there? Well, actually, I'm good where I am.
Did you get it done?
Asked me, he said, how many people are going to be at your wedding? And I said, I don't know, about 100. And he said, do you really plan to tell the story of how you went to Vietnam and met Jung 100 times? And I said, no, I'm only going to do it once. But before I begin, I'd like to first thank all the people who helped this, because I actually did surprisingly little. So, first I'd like to
Vietnam and
thank
getting married, that
Norma,
counts.
who did arranged all the food. And then I'd like to thank the crew who helped cut all the grass and set up all the tables and pretty much do everything here that makes it look nice. I will. So I have my mom
Gotta have your shades
and my
on.
sister who helped me copy the photo albums you see around here. And then my mother's siblings, her 2 sisters, Annie and Nancy. Nancy's husband Keith. Their son Eric, who's around here somewhere. Okay. And then we have my mom's 2 brothers, Rick and David. There's Rick, David in the back. And then, of course, Maria,
Great
who's
thing about
been
being
around
kind of
here.
smile
There
and
she is.
clap. They're great.
And finally, Dennis, who helped my mom move a giant pile of dirt that was blocking the road there.
And I can't tell. See the
Ooh, and
reflection
Tom.
of the sun.
Tom also helped.
Yeah, I
Right, Tom.
And then lastly, I'd like to thank
helped. I don't know
Well,
what I
the
did.
person-
That's okay.
Oh, yes, Wendy, Chris, and Shadia. There they are.
I can't tell. I can't
Yeah,
see
my
if this
dad's
thing's recording
sister
because
Wendy,
of the reflection.
and then her son
Is it
Chris,
recording?
and his wife Shadia, who's around here,
She's over there somewhere.
over there.
No, you see. Oh, look at that. Look.
And then, of course,
There, okay.
the person who made this all possible, Jung. Since without her, this would just be a story of how I went to Vietnam, worked for 2 years, and came back.
Yeah.
And none of you would be here. So,
And you would have to tell it 100 times.
exactly.
Yeah.
So just like to introduce very briefly my wife, Jung.
Yay!
Hello, everybody. I am Dung. Thank you, y'all, for coming your wedding.
Yay.
Yeah.
No, you're staying.
Her plan was to say absolutely nothing, but I reminded her that during our wedding in Vietnam, during the church, I had to read an entire Bible passage in Vietnamese.
Nice.
While her entire family and half the town stared at me.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we figured she could say a few lines. But
He did.
back to the story, it's really all Brianna's fault. How I ended up in Vietnam.
Way to go, Brianna.
Woo, Brianna.
So I was in school, and Brianna was traveling around Guatemala. And I thought, what she's doing sounds way more interesting than what I'm doing. So I was on my last year of school, and I saw a program that said, Teach English in Japan. So I said, sure, why not? So I went over,
Sure, why not?
and I filled out their vast quantity of forms, and I got my recommendations, and I turned it all in. And in February of 2009, they rejected me. So I had a friend who had taught English in China,
Okay, I'm hoping.
and so I
No,
called
it's
him
cool. I
up
can't
and
tell what's
I asked
really
him, well, who did you use? And he said, I used a group called Volunteers in Asia. So I said, fine. He gave me their website, I applied, and they asked me, why do you want to teach in China? And I said, well, I don't really.
Nice.
I can teach wherever you have room. And they said, well, China's kind of full. How about Vietnam?
So
Yeah, well, okay.
And I said, sure, I don't know anything about Vietnam, but I can go there. And they said, where do you want to go in Vietnam? I said, well, somewhere out of the way. Find me the most rural, out-of-the-way post you have and send me there.
Wow.
And it turns out there was no competition for that. So while everyone else was fighting over the city posts, I got sent to some rice fields in the middle of some mountains in southern Vietnam.
Nice.
And I showed up about summer, fall of 2009, and I was working for a microloan nonprofit that gave microloans to farmers. And my job was to teach English to the people in the office and teach English to the English teachers in town and government workers and anyone else who wanted to learn English. And that was where I met Jung. She was one of the workers in the office. And she, like most everyone else, spoke almost no English. Because in Vietnam, especially in the countryside, they learned English because the government said, well, Russian's on the way out. Time to learn English. And they handed them books, handed them some dictionaries. They said, you're an English teacher now. So all these poor Russian and French teachers who had never spoken English before were then given the new job to teach English. So they have grammar books, they have dictionaries, they have things that they can read and write, and most of them can't speak English really at all. So the reading and writing is pretty good, and my job was to work on the speaking and listening part.
We were supposed to laugh there.
I know,
The
I saw
pauses.
that.
And I immediately noticed Jung because every other woman I saw there had really long hair. And her hair was cut off about here. And also, in many cases, people are known for being relatively quiet and shy, and her not so much.
She got that one.
So I was there a few weeks,
I'm just gonna,
and my plan was to go to Vietnam, work for 2 years, and come home. It was absolutely not to get involved with anyone while I was over there. Because officially in Vietnam, usually if you end up with boyfriend and girlfriend, the idea is you're going to get married, you're going to stay there, and foreigners have a kind of bad rap there of coming, promising a whole bunch of things, fooling around, and then disappearing when they head back home. So I wasn't planning on getting involved, and it turns out Jung absolutely wasn't planning on getting involved with any foreigner. But one day, she comes up and she says, "Teacher." No one could pronounce my name, so I was teacher.
nice.
"Teacher, do you want to come to my house for lunch with my friend Jung, who was also in my class?" I said, "Sure, why not?" It was about 10 o'clock. She said, "You will need more clothes." I said, "Wait, what?" "It's very far." So what we worked out is I was
Very
going
far.
to her house
Yeah.
4 or 5 hours away and gonna have lunch the next day.
Nice.
So
It's kind of like inviting somebody up for breakfast up in Truckee or something.
So
Yeah.
I got on the back of her motorbike with her friend Jung, who was going with her boyfriend Tuan, and the two of us hopped 2 motorbikes, 4 people, and we just started driving down the road through the water buffalo and the rice fields
Yep.
and everything.
Yeah.
And 4 hours later or so, we ended up at her house with really, I want to say, her tribal compound
Yeah.
because it's not so much her parents' house as it is her parents' house next to her uncle's house, next to her grandmother and aunt's house, across the street from her other uncle's house, next to her sister-in-law's house,
Wow.
and near her other aunt's house, and with another aunt's house down the street. And then, of course, various other uncles and cousins that are more distant relations scattered throughout. So when I meet
Giving
the
Tara a hard
family,
time.
I didn't so much meet her parents
She's been
as I
stalking
met
me.
a good 30 people who were all gathered around, and we ate lunch together, me and 30 other guys. there were too many people, so they broke us up into guys and girls. Whereas Jung said, "You sit here," and then just abandons me and goes off into the room with the women.
Nice.
So I'm eating and drinking with a whole bunch of guys, none of whom speak English. I've been in Vietnam for 2 months now, so my Vietnamese is not so good. And
Oh, Brandon.
I am trying to explain to them that I don't actually drink alcohol, which, if anyone knows anything about Vietnam, is not usually done there, the not drinking.
No kidding.
They usually drink at any kind of party until they are completely hammered.
Nice.
Luckily, her friend's boyfriend
Yes.
spoke a tiny bit of English, and we were able to translate that, and we worked that out, and it all worked out pretty well. And after we went back to where I taught, and we kept hanging out, often after class. I taught classes 5 days a week to various people, and often after class I would go out with students, and all the students were my age or older, and I'd go out with students, and we'd go to the cafe, and we'd eat tiny fertilized duck eggs or things like that. What would we do? And I got gradually
wanna know.
thinking, I was like, I really like this girl. And I thought, but you aren't going to get a girlfriend here because you didn't want to marry anyone. And I thought, I could marry this girl. And I thought, well, that's crazy.
Oh, wow.
So I immediately started looking for reasons why that was crazy and why it wasn't going to work out.
Of course.
And I tried really, really hard for about 5 months.
Yep.
And wasn't able to come up with any good reasons why I wasn't going to marry her. But I said, at least I have to learn enough language that I can actually speak with her and her family. That's a good prerequisite
Not
to
a bad
marriage.
idea.
Yeah.
And I was talking with my mom, and I was talking about her. My mom said, so, are you going to marry this girl? I said, yeah, I might. She said, okay, I just wanted to check to see where it was going.
Jeez.
And so I end up going to her house a few more times. I go there for a little bit after Christmas. Her family's Catholic, so we go over
Exactly.
for Christmas. They don't celebrate Christmas Day. They just celebrate Christmas Eve, and you all go to church. And so I visited her family for that. They're all pig farmers, by the way. They farm pigs,
I
a
love
couple of them rice,
Pig, pig,
chickens,
pig.
occasionally mushrooms, sometimes rabbits, various other creatures as you need them. And
I'm going to the shade, man.
so I go visit her for
I'll
Christmas,
miss
and then in February, I find out that I'm getting fired. Apparently, I didn't know it at the time, but apparently the head of the office thought that I was a bad use of their money. And I thought he was a bad use of their money too. And we didn't really get along well. And so he one day walks up and says, the officials in Vietnam in this district have decided that you can no longer teach here. I found out from Jung later that he had actually decided that 2 months earlier, in December, that he was going to fire me in February, make up a story about officials, and then he's told all the staff that they couldn't tell me on pain of being fired. That's also what he told his boss, the Belgian who runs the NGOs, the officials. And the Belgian boss said, these officials, they're always causing problems. So he must have done this before. So I get fired. I get sent off to another office in the Delta, and Jung is still staying where I started out, still working for the nonprofit doing the microloans. And a week later, I get fired from the second office over a disagreement about how many foreigners that office head wanted in his office, because there were already 2 Dutch people and I was one too many. So I've now been fired twice, and Jung feels very sorry for me and invites me to her house for the Vietnamese New Year, because I had literally nowhere else to go. I was actually without a place to stay. The police would have sent me out of the country. But Jung invites me over to her house for New Year, and I see all her family. It's a big deal, Pet. It's their Vietnamese New Year, Lunar New Year. It takes several days. They get together, they eat. It's kind of like the Christmas, New Year holiday here, but even more important. So everyone goes home. You can't buy food because all the shops are closed. You can't buy anything. It's a 3-day complete holiday. And I meet her family and then I go off to teach in a university up in the middle of the country, really far away. A good hour plane ride or, I don't know, 10-hour bus ride, probably more. up in the middle of the country. And I keep in touch with Jung by text message because my Vietnamese and her English isn't good enough to do it by college. But I'm gradually getting better. We always text in English and Vietnamese so we can practice doing both. And then in March, my mom and sister came. So February I get fired. Well, yeah, February I get fired, then later in February I get fired again. Then we have New Year. Then I head up to Hue in the middle of the country for my next teaching gig at a university, which I kept for the next year and a half. And my mom comes in March, as does my sister. And the deal is they're going to come, and then we're all going to go and meet Jung down in the south and go to Cambodia, Angkor Wat, big temples and so forth. Really good. You should see them. It's they're giant, several hundred-year-old Buddhist temples they have in Cambodia. And we are going to go with her, and then we're going to come back and meet Jung's family. And then we're going to talk about getting married, assuming that works out. I wanted my mom and sister's second opinion because I'd been in Vietnamese rice fields for a while, and I wasn't quite sure how my judgment was. There's no one speaking English, there's no one doing anything, I've like forgotten how to pick up a fork. I need some outside feedback. So, my mom and sister come in March, we head down to meet Jung. Now Jung is a little suspicious about going to Cambodia because she doesn't really know me. And there's two things you have to worry about with a Western boyfriend. One is that they're gonna fool around, make a bunch of promises, and then disappear. The other is that you're gonna go with them and no one's gonna ever hear from you again.
Ooh.
So those are the two worries. Now she was pretty sure the first one was good. She was gonna meet my mom and sister, and we're gonna go to Cambodia. And her friend said, you know, you have to be careful because assuming that I'm a trafficker, I probably have a mom and sister on hire to come with me to make people feel more at home. That's a common practice.
Oh my God.
But she met them, and she decided they actually were my mom and sister. So we meet her sister who lived in Saigon, and a couple other cousins and friends, and I sort of lost track at the time who was exactly who. But we meet them, and then we go off to Cambodia. And we go to Cambodia for 4 days, and we see all the temples. And then we come back to discuss when we want to get married. And we come back and start talking with Jung's family. Now, apparently, Jung had not told her family about that we were thinking about getting married. Because she wasn't sure it was real yet. So. But after meeting us, after spending some time in Cambodia, meeting my mom, meeting my sister, she decided that I was real, and that she could marry me, and it could probably work out.
Until she comes back.
And
honest
so
to God. That's fine.
she tells her mom, and her mom asks a lot of questions, like, really? Jung says, yes, really, yes. Have you thought about this? Yes. Have you thought some more about this? Yes. Are you sure? Yes. Still sure? Yes. And they like my mom and sister, so that helps. And at the very end of their time there, we talk with her mom, and we schedule something for October. And Jung then still goes back to the south, and I head back up north and start teaching again. My mom and sister go home. Now, my sister's opinion on it, my mom's opinion on it was she loved Jung. Jung was awesome. My sister's opinion on it was that if I did not marry Jung, I was a moron. She said, Brandon, if you don't marry Jung, you are a moron. Because if you find someone that perfect for you and that awesome, you have to marry them. I said, okay. Brianna's usually a pretty good judge of, if she likes someone, they're usually a pretty good person. We once said that her list of people that she really, really liked fit on a small post-it note. But Jung's on that list. In fact, it's very nice. She came over for spring break recently, and she and Jung were hanging out. And Brana said, I don't want to leave. I'm going to have to go back to school. And I said, well, last time you were here, you didn't even stay the whole winter break. You left. And she says, yeah, but that was just Linda. Now I've got me and Jung. It's much more exciting here. But anyway, I'm back up in the university teaching, and she's back down working for the boss that fired me. Apparently they hate each other too. That boss considered Jung too disobedient, I believe was his word. And she considered him incompetent. So she decides that she's done working there, and she takes her severance pay and she leaves in May of 2010 now. So March we go to Angkor Wat. We agree that we're going to get married in October. May, she decides she's done. She takes her severance pay. She says, see you. She comes up to Hue and just stays with me up in the dorms up there, where I'm teaching at the school. And then she decides, she says, I think we should build a house. That's a good idea. So we decided to build a house right near her parents' house in that whole compound. There was some space in between her uncle's house and her parents' house. We estimated how much it's going to cost. When it was all done, it cost $7,500 to build the house and the bathroom and the shower and that all, everything. And before I built the house, everyone in town said, Jung is very stupid because she is fooling around with a foreigner and he's going to leave her. She's going to be very sad. But then we built the house, and everyone said, Jung is very smart because she's fooling around with a foreigner, and he's going to leave her, but then she'll have a house. So her stock in town shot up immensely, and she was able to get a house out of me before I left her for my other wife back in America. So it rolls around to October, and we have to get all the paperwork for getting married, which is a whole nother story I'm not going to go into here. Suffice to say, getting paperwork to marry a Vietnamese person in Vietnam is really, really difficult. So anyway, we did that, and then there's going to be a wedding. I asked how many people are going to be at this wedding. She said, well, my side's going to have about 400 to 450. I said, okay, I'll see how many I can get. So I ended up with my mom, my sister, and my brother, he's around here somewhere, back there, his wife, my old rowing coach, Chris, who I also worked for, known for 10 years, and Taum Sayers. Where's Tom? There he is, Taum Sayers. I think that's all of them. Oh, Spenser, my friend, Spenser and Eugene. There we go.
Over here. Right here.
There we go. That's all 8. I got 8.
All right.
And they came for the whole week. So they got to meet about a week and a half. They got to meet all of her family and friends and everyone. And then during the actual day of the wedding, another 5 people came down who had been living and working in Vietnam with me, in other parts of Vietnam, and they came down. So this meant I had 13 foreigners, 12 of whom were white, because they don't consider Vietnamese Americans really foreigners. So I had 12 white foreigners who could act as like a shield, emissaries, if you will, that I could send out into the sea of Vietnamese people to placate them. Because a Vietnamese wedding is all about consuming an unlimited amount of food and, if you are men, alcohol. And all the people, all the men want to drink with the foreigner. And all the women want to chat with the foreigner. And everyone wants some piece of the foreigner. I was only one of me, so if there was 400 Vietnamese, that wasn't going to work. So I could send out everyone else, and they would all go, wow, Vietnam's so new. And I was like, good, it's new for you. Go, do it. Whereas I had already done that 1,000 times before, so I think the first day, my friend Spenser was there, and all the men were there, and they were sitting there, and they were giving him unlimited beer and cigarettes. And I walked up, and I said, and he was like, oh, hey, Brandon, you're party. And I was like, you don't even smoke. I said, but they're free. They just keep giving them free.
Yeah.
So he woke up the next day, and he was like, yeah, I think I'll be cutting back on that every day. But it was great. They all came for the wedding, and I married Dung. And over time, my Vietnamese and her English got better and better. And that was now a year and a half ago. And I don't regret any of that. That was still the best decision I possibly made. Because she's awesome. I knew that when I met her. And then as I've gotten to know her, she's only gotten more awesome. So. And we decided we had our little church wedding ceremony, where, as I said, I got to read the Bible, try not to mispronounce anything in Vietnamese in front of an entire sea of people all staring at me. And then we had our house ceremony, where the 400 people came, and my 12. And everyone ate and drank and had good fun. And then the idea was to do a second party once we got her visa. So fast forward to now, we got her visa, and I got to invite all family and friends and all the people I know to come and do the other half of that ceremony in Vietnam. So, thank you all for coming. And now, a couple of the other people who came to the wedding in Vietnam would like to say a few words or tell a few stories that they had during their time there. So to start things off is my friend Spenser.
Okay.
Yay!
Thank you, Jane. Works better farther away? Yeah, okay. Hello, everybody.
Hey.
It's a bit smaller than the Vietnamese wedding. Like he said, there were about 400 people at this site, but this is really amazing. That was an amazing retelling of the whole story. I don't think I've even heard every single bit of it. I could definitely piece it together from the emails if I wanted to, which I did read all those. I just don't have the best memory. Yeah, the trip to Vietnam was amazing. I really want to thank Linda for taking me. Thank you very much for that. That was an incredible experience. I feel extremely lucky to have been a part of it. Yeah, I've never been to Asia before, and going to my friend's wedding, my friend of 20 years. We met in Jefferson when we were 7, I believe. I'm 27 now. I think I have my math right there. I think that's right. I have had much less beer at this party than I did. I did kind of overextend on the very first night when Yoon's uncle welcomed me with open arms into his house. We took many shots of rice wine, and I managed to embarrass myself by breaking one of the shots, which I felt terrible for, but all the men reassured me it was no big deal, which was great. And that was the general feeling when we got to Young's family's houses. We were all given places to stay, which I was incredibly grateful for. I shared a room with Chris. I hope I didn't snore too loudly. I think I was too bad. Yeah, it was just an incredible feeling of welcome. It was amazing to meet Jung and her family, and yeah, I don't have any particular stories necessarily. You will, I think, hear a lot about Eugene's rendition of Hotel California in front of roughly 400 people at the karaoke stage they had there, which I was far too scared to brave, really. I did film it and put it on a private YouTube channel. Yeah, I know I'd met Tom before, I think. I became very good friends with him during the trip as well. Yeah, it was, yeah, Brandon's family is great as always. I've been lucky to know them for these 20 years. It's very weird giving a speech here in this yard that I used to play in for countless hours. I was just talking to Karen about that, an epic water fight. She, Brandon, I believe Brianna, and Eugene had. Yeah, we had super soakers and water balloons. I forget who had the super soakers, but that was an extremely unfair advantage. But yeah, that is mostly what I want to express is my deep gratitude for being taken on that trip. It was incredible. I was really lucky to have been there to see your wedding, both the church wedding and the house wedding, and the endless partying. It was amazing. And yeah, that's really what I wanted to express. So thank you very much.
Cool. You want to get that? It's going.
I believe next is Taum Sayers.
I've been coming down here. I'm part of a teaching group with Linda and have been for 35 some years. And it has been such an honor just to be a part of this extended family. And she made the honor even greater when she invited me to go to Vietnam to watch the ceremony and visit over there. Couple memories come back. That I can share. The night of the party, one of Young's cousins, I think it's a cousin, is trying to talk myself and Christopher, his uncle, into going over and seeing his place. And we tried to get some help in understanding what he wanted to show us, and the closest we could get to it was that he raised rabbits, which was close. And so we decided we didn't want to go that evening, that maybe that wasn't such a good idea, but the next day. So he came and got us the next day. And again, this compound is rather big. I think we walked down, which would be almost a street block here, turned right, and got, let's see, about 10 feet, and he decided he wanted to start introducing us to his neighbors who we hadn't met yet. And I think we went to 3 or 4 different homes, just going, I mean, the people are so nice and warm and welcome and curious about these foreigners, you know, just to see, you know, like anybody, something new and exotic. And we get up to, after, it took us about an hour to get to the next corner, and we start to make the turn, and there's a little store there. And the store's almost like, in the area, I think there's a little store, I guess you'd call it a store. It's not like a 7-Eleven, it's like a little store that will have rice and beans and cold beer and alcohol and cigarettes and different things, and that's how they host the community there. They hold space there. They know that they'll go into town and bring these things back, and then if you're, you know, getting low on milk or getting low on this, that they'll have it at the corner. So we went in to visit with him, and he spoke really good English. And so we volunteered him to come with us. And I think it took us another half hour to finally get to her uncle's house. And we come in, and I believe we took our shoes off there. I believe we took our shoes off whenever we went into someone's house, kind of like here. So, you know, and I do that at home, so it wasn't anything really strange. And we get in there, and his wife offers us tea and I think some kind of croissant or something like that. And we're sitting there, and Chris has to get up and go to the bathroom. And someone escorts him as well as around this corner and back here. And Christopher's gone for a couple minutes, and I hear this voice. He goes, "Tom," says, "you better come back here." And I was sitting going, okay. I mean, he and I have known each other for, what, 3 days now? And we've been through a fair lot. I mean, we bonded enough, but there's this tone of, I'm not sure, because I don't really understand his inflections yet, whether it's worry, excitement, concern, or what the... We go back there, and he has, like, pens, concrete pens. Walls are maybe about this high, maybe about this thick, and there's little cubicles up and down in this cupboard like in a shed. And the fellow raises porcupines and sells them to someone in China. And I've never seen it. We're going, okay. And apparently he makes a really good living. I mean, it's a wonderful home. And I mean, it's a nice place. I've never met a porcupine rancher. So it's getting a little late. It's getting on to be about 2 or 3 o'clock. And the 4 of us decide to escort, well, they're going to walk with us back. We'll go to his friend's house, or the store, and then head on back. We get to the store, and he invites us in for a drink. And Jack Daniel's Red, and for those that, I mean, a good old bottle of Jack Daniel's Red that I think has been sitting in his home for like 20 years, that someone had given him a really long time ago. and now was a special occasion to break it out. And darned if we didn't sit there and drink that whole thing. And I don't drink hard alcohol. Those of you who saw me drink half a beer yesterday, that's probably the first beer I've had in a year. And we downed some serious amount of alcohol, and I don't think we really were feeling it. Maybe it just tasted like alcohol. And from there, we headed back down to see these guys. I think we stopped at 2 or 3 more homes, and finally made it
I
back.
assure you it was alcohol.
Well, I should have been a lot, as much as we drank, I should have really been stupid, and I didn't feel quite that stupid. Maybe it was? Okay, maybe it was the altitude. Yeah, because I'm used to higher. But they were just really, the folks there were just warm and easy to sit and talk with, even if you didn't understand each other, and that was okay. Short little thing. After we got done out, and we stayed with the family. I think her brother gave up his bed for a few days, and I think Eugene and I shared it with a net over us because there was a few bugs floating around, and a fan going because it was a little warmer there than I'm used to. And so we leave from there and we go in and spend 3 or 4 days in Saigon. And most of you know I do massage work. And across the street, or just down the street from the hotel, is the Vietnamese Blind Institute for Massage. And it's a school for massage, and all the therapists there are blind. And in our world, blind therapists are kind of, it's almost like they have an edge. It's like their sense of touch is even a little higher elevated. So I can't remember what the other guys did, but I wanted to go check that out. So I went in and set up, got myself a massage. There was a sauna there, and take a shower, then go get on the table. And I got my hour massage, and it was okay. I mean, I'm kind of spoiled. I've been around some pretty good body workers, and it was okay and rather inexpensive. So I walk down the street, and there's another place. So I go in there and get a 2-hour massage. And it was okay. So I got out of there, walked down the street, and got another one. This gal was really good, so I went back there every day for the rest of the day. But the hospitality that we were shown was above and beyond. I'm kind of disappointed we don't have karaoke here today, because I know Brandon was looking forward to it. If you ever get the chance, it's a great country to visit. It's safe, it's clean, the people are nice, and I was lucky enough to go with friends and get to experience it.
Okay, so I believe next is my brother Jed.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
I was going to go last.
Okay, we can send Eugene up first if you want.
Yeah, I want to go after you.
Okay, Eugene's right there. Okay, next we have Eugene.
All right, but I'm not.
Can you go see
Hey guys, how's it going? Great. It's so good to see so many of you. Chris, Mister, further from the mic. How's that? Perfect. Fantastic. Yeah. So I'm a comedian in New York, or I was, and so I have a very fraught relationship with microphones. But this is something like this.
That's good.
How's that? Okay.
That's good.
We can still hear you.
I'm sorry, Bob. It keeps just, yeah.
Here, hold that on it for a minute.
Hold that on.
Just point it up
Test it
there.
out.
Okay.
Kudos. So yeah, October of 2010, I received an email from my friend Brandon, and he asked me to come to Vietnam, and I took a very young there, and I was thrilled. I thought, why not? This is going to be an adventure, and he's clearly serious because he's flying me out there. So we went out, flew into Saigon, and jumped into this diesel-fueled Isuzu, and we kind of crawled out of the industrial intestinal tract of Saigon Because if you've never been to that part of Asia, they have so many motorbikes, just like hundreds of thousands of motorbikes rolling around in these giant roundabouts. And we got out into the countryside, and I got to see all of these beautiful groves of rubber trees where they had sliced sort of spiral slices down the tree trunks to bleed all of the rubber out. And we arrived after about 30 hours of travel. And I was immediately introduced to Jung's uncle, Taum. And Taum took me into his house, and he sat me down, and he asked me, "What is it that you do for a living?" And I don't speak Vietnamese, so I sort of tried to mime that I'm someone who says self-deprecating things into microphones. And he leaned back and he went, "Oh, karaoke." And immediately opened up his armoire and pulled out his karaoke machine and wanted me to sing. And I said, no, I'm just going to go hide under the mosquito net with Tom and go to bed. And every day afterwards, he seemed to be like, "Do you want me to take it out? I can take it out. Take it out anytime." And I said, no, I'm sorry. We've got to go down to the market to get a fruit shake. Or we've got to go around the corner to catch a fish and eat it. But it was very flattering to hear that from someone like that, because I'd been struggling to sort of get my comedy career going in New York, and it was nice to come all the way over to Vietnam and have this guy say, "Oh, no, I totally let you get up and sing." But eventually, I've been having a hard time in New York. I've been trying to go around and introduce myself, and I would go to bars and say, "Hi, I'm Eugene Ashton Gonzalez," and people would say, "Hi, Adrian," because apparently I mumble, and I cannot pronounce my name well enough to be heard. But it was a great start for a comedy career. I wanted to be somebody else in some ways. I wanted to drop my first name and just take my last name as my real name, Ashton Gonzalez. Hey, I'm Ashton. How you doing? And I only became friends with porn stars using that name. But it was nice. And so eventually the wedding rolls around, and you've heard how many people were there, and it was a little bit intense, to be quite honest with you. Brandon was completely overwhelmed, because who wouldn't be overwhelmed doing something that brave? And I eventually was standing there by the buffet table, and Uncle Tom came up, and he said, "Yo," because he couldn't pronounce my name, just like everybody in New York. He was like, "Yo." Time to karaoke. And I said to him, I was like, Tom, I'm sorry, I don't know any Vietnamese love songs. Do you know any, does the band know any American songs? And he goes and he checks and he comes back. Hotel California.
Oh! Of course I know that song!
Right? You all know that song. Nina knows that song. A little bit. Come on, don't be coy. And so the Hotel California situation, I said, "Oh no, of course, and he turns back and runs off to tell the band that I'm next, and I'm like, "Oh no, I don't know that song at all." And so Jung is in the process of changing into different dresses, because at the Vietnamese wedding, the bride needs to wear many different kinds of dresses that are all like totally stunning. And so she's in the middle of like swapping dresses out, and I'm like, Jung, I need to get into your bedroom because I need to reset the router so that I can take my iPhone and look for the lyrics to Hotel California. So she's trying to help me. She understands me. She gets her younger sister to go to like unlock the door and where everything is, and I go and I'm setting it up, and then I'm like huddling back by the pig wallows, trying to get a signal, trying to load songmeanings.com. And Tom is very angry, and he's looking for me. Finally, he finds me, and it hasn't loaded, and he grabs me by the arm, and he's like, "Now!" And I get pulled up on top of this stage, a little bit like this, with 250 Vietnamese people here, and 250 Vietnamese people here, and no machine to tell me what the lyrics are.
And the MC, who's wearing this beautiful peach 70s lapel situation, is like, "The amazing Gene!" And the band begins to play. And you guys know a little bit of Hotel California. It goes, you know, for the first 8 measures, it's just sort of that. And I jump in on the second measure. On a dark desert highway, cool wind in my hair, warm smell of bonitas, la 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 la, la 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 la, la la la. And I go on for the entire song like that. And at the end, there is a very polite Asian applause. And one of the one of I think the daughters of Jung's cousin, or some maybe the niece, she's probably 6. Her mother, I see her kind of forcibly encourage her up towards the stage, and the little girl about the size of this gentleman here comes up and she gives me like a piece of a plant, like this. And it might have been a flower one at some point, but it was not a flower that day. And I put it in my shirt. There's a picture of it somewhere. And everybody takes my photograph, and I walk over to where Taum, her uncle, is standing. And he gives me one. I mean, sometimes you don't need to speak the same language to understand. And he just gives me one of these, like a squeeze on the shoulder and a.
Nice try.
I feel like I've let him down. But 2 minutes later, he comes back up to me with a beer, and he says, "Again." And by that point, songmeanings.com had loaded. So I get up there and I go through the second rendition of it. And this time, because I know the words, the place explodes. They are like, "Holy crap!" Some kid comes up to me, he's like, "You are number 1!" all of her younger sister's friends from Saigon want to get their photograph taken in the corner. And suddenly a massive success. And I'm thinking, why can I never feel like this in New York? They asked me to go up there and sing it 6 more times. I honestly don't know how I made it. It was probably because Linda was so kind that she flipped my liver over before the That is magic, and do not teach it to anyone without the responsibility to use it. And I woke up next to Tom the morning after. No, he's a great bunkmate, okay? And I was looking out the window, actually, I remember, in Tom's guest room, and I was realizing that, like, I felt so stressed out about accepting myself and accepting what I wanted to do with my life and be a comic. And I was like, my oldest friend, who has always challenged me at every point in my life, every point, since we were 3. You know, he must have, like the amount that he must have believed in himself and really accepted himself to go all the way over there and marry this woman that he fell in love with. It just completely floored me, and I could not. In many ways, I realized just how much of a inspirational figure he's been for me. And when I got ready to jump back into the Isuzu and go down to Saigon and embark on some more adventures with Tom, which he briefly touched upon, I gave him a big hug and I said, "I love you, man, because you teach me how to grow every day." That's it.
Thank you, Mr. Stein. Excellent.
Well, as kind of laid out this whole, the whole experience of of going to Vietnam was a sort of a pretty amazing, amazing time for us, amazing space for us to go into, and amazing to kind of meet Young and her family. Before this kind of, for me, you know, Brandon is my youngest brother. Brianna and Brandon, my two youngest siblings, and there's a kind of, you know, I've been, as I know a lot of you, I've known you a long time, but not seen you for a long time, obviously, the beard, all of those things. And going back over that and thinking about the last time I saw a lot of the people that are here today, I realized, you know, how long it's really been, you know, almost 20 years for some people. I went away to school when these guys were just pretty young still, you know? And so for me, it's always been an interesting, curious thing to hear about what's going on a lot of times and wonder what they're doing, and to have them kind of grow up in these crazy big spurts where they just make these huge leaps, you know. Brianna pretty obviously kind of developed the rambling bug, and she's been out there a long time, but Brandon, I honestly didn't expect it from, and I was a little surprised. Not so much the go teach English after college thing, that seems pretty standard. You know, I know that. I thought of that from time to time myself. It's a good way, you know, to get out in the world. And but the fact that when he got to where he got, he was so comfortable, obviously, that he started making plans to kind of live there. The fact that we're all seeing you now because you're here and because you're planning on moving back is still, for me, is the remarkable thing, you know. And so when we did go to the wedding, it was, for me, it was with a lot of, how do you say? I was really, really deeply mystified as to what was going on, and had no idea what to expect. And then right. And we got there, and it was all the things that everybody said, and it was astounding, and the people were incredibly generous, and in some ways, you know, it was interesting to be able to go into a family's space. One thing about going to Vietnam is there's not this kind of go to Vietnam, go anywhere you want. There's not hotels all over the place. There's not this sort of same, you know, people go and they go to the cities, and we were going to a place where really people didn't go much as tourists. We were really going to this place where everybody knew everybody. And that was kind of intense, kind of a weird experience. I mean, looking out here, it's kind of like that, but absolutely opposite and different, but the same. If that makes any sense. But that's the whole other thing. But a beautiful, beautiful city. And Linda and Brandon, Brianna and Young came and met us there, and we had some kind of really nice hanging out time, you know. We were very lucky to start to, we would go out to dinner. Kate and I were sort of looking at what's great in land, you know. When you travel, at least for me, Kate and I wanted to go do some touristing, so we went to Hoi An, which is cool, but that's the whole other thing. But a beautiful, beautiful city. And Linda and Brandon, Brianna and Young came and met us there, and we had some kind of really nice hanging out time, you know. We were very lucky to start to, we would go out to dinner. Kate and I were sort of looking at what's great in land, you know. When you travel, at least for me, Kate and I wanted to go do some touristing, so we went to Hoi An, which is